Okay, we're in the middle of a sugya where Ben Beseira had said if you go ahead do kmitza with your left hand, you could put it back. Rav said if you do kmitza, you could put it back. Why was Rav adding to Ben Beseira? Rav is telling us not only in the case of left-handedness where you took it, the kaimitz, could you put it back, but even in the other cases, zar, oinin, v'kahena, you could put it back as well. That was the chiddush of Rav. The Gemara then went ahead and wanted to go ahead and say this that Rav said that you could put it back is only if you didn't put it in another kli yet. But in the process of mitzvah, your your kaimitz. I really should go through it a little bit. You would go ahead and say in your house this meat is kaidish. At this point in time, it gets kedushas damim. You'd bring it to the base of Migdash, they put it in a kli shares. That kli shares, now it gets kedushas haguf. The kohen would do kmitza from that kli shares, and then he would put it in another kli shares. Okay, so where it's saying that when he does kmitza, you can't put it back in the original kli that it was in, is only if you didn't put it in the second kli. If you put it in the second kli, you would not be able to put it back. That was the second opinion. So there's two opinions. Rav either argued with these two Tanoim, Rabbi Yosef ben Yassan and Rabbi Yehuda Hanachdim, who did not permit you to put it back if you put it in the second kli, or no, he agreed with them, and that's where we were holding. Good. So, Maskaler of Nachman. Let me give you the question outside, fellas. You have these two Tanoim. You have Rabbi Yosef ben Yassan and Rabbi Yehuda Hanachdim. They say the following: you take the kmitza, you do the kmitza. And if you put it in your zar, and you put it in the second kli, then you can't put it back. But if you don't put it in the second kli, you could put it back. Now, what do they hold? If they hold that a psul who does it, it's finishes it off, why do you have to put it in the second kli? Why do you have to put it in the second kli to go ahead and mess it up? It's messed up as soon as he did it in the first place. After all, he's a czar. So why would the second kli, why would that go ahead and affect it? And if he holds that initially when he doesn't, he takes it, it's not a psul because you could put it back. Even putting in the second kli should make it worse. Mimanav shach. Let's just look at the moment of kmitza, guys. A czar does a moment of kmitza. Is it out of the ballpark or not? So you want to tell me, well, it's not really out of the ballpark until you put it in the second kli. But why? If it's not in the ballpark, then putting in the second, meaning it's not a kmitza, so putting in the second kli is you put a non-kaimitz in a kli. Take it back and put it back. Where do you get this hybrid of, one second, if you take it, you can put it back. But if you take it, put it in the kli, then you can't put it back. It's either good or it's not good. That's the Gemara's kasha. Fred the Gemara. Maskler of Nachman. Maikos Savri Hani Tanoi. These Tanoim, Rabbi Yosef ben Yassin, Rabbi Yehuda Hanachdim, who said if you put it in the second kli, you can't put it back, but if you don't put it in the second kli, you could put it back. I kamitza psulin avoidahi. If the kamitza psul, in this case we said a zar is an avoida. Afagav lo yavid le matan kli. Even if you didn't put it into the second kli, it should be out of the ballpark, and it's puzzle. And I kamitza psulin lav avoida. And if the kamitza of the psulim is not considered an avodah, ki avad lamatan kli, when you put it in the second kli, my have. It's a great kasha, right? It really is a great kasha. Hada Rav Nachman, this is what Rav Nachman asked. Now Rav Nachman said, la'olam avodahi. Really, it's an avodah. It's an avodah, as soon as they take it. But you know what? V'loigam avodah the avad lamatan kli. But it's an avodah that's not complete until you put it in the kli. In other words, you thought the avodah is complete at the shas kamitza. Guys, the avodah starts at the shas kamitza. The completion of the avodah is you put it in the second kli. So now, guys, it's very geshmak. What was your kasha? If when I talk it's puzzle, it should be puzzle. Putting in the second kli should not be milo moirid. It is. It does make a difference. Itaka is an avodah. But don't think the avodah ends as soon as you do this. The avodah ends when you do this. So geshmak. If I did this avodah and then put it back in, I could put it back because I never completed the avodah. If, on the other hand, I put it in the kli over here, right? When I put that in the kli, at this point in time, I finished the avodah, and therefore it's possible. And that's the svara of Rabbi Yosef ben Yasin and Rabbi Yehuda Hanachtam. Good. Okay, guys, listen to this kasha. Listen to this kasha. So you're telling me the following: when you take it, the avodah is not complete until you put it in the kli, correct? So what happens? You're going to take it and you're going to put it back. Aren't you putting it back into a kli? Mali the second kli, mali the first kli. If you're telling me that the kmitza, the gavoid is complete when you put it in a kli, I should not be able to put it back because putting it in the first kli is tantamount to putting it in the second kli. It's the gemara avoida, and it was psul. So how can you put it back? How can you put it back? In other words, the Gemara is assuming there's no difference between the first kli and the second kli because it's a kli shares. If that's the case, why do these Tanoim allow you to put it back in the first kli? If you're telling me that the Gemara of an avoid is when you put it in the kli, you should be able to put it back in the first kli. Fred the Gemara Kasha. The kli. Ihachi. Afilo loy kiddush. V'chi mahadalei l'koimetz l'duchte. Tigdish. Some people take out the last words on the Amid Bays. Let's go with Amid Aleph, guys. When you put the koimitz, when the zor takes the koimitz that he took from the first place, and he puts it back in the first place, tigdosh. Why? Because you put it back in a kli. Vilifso, and it should be what? It should be puzzle. Guys, have the kasha? No? Okay, we'll do the kasha one more time. We have the shita of Rav Yosef ben Yasmin and Rav Yehuda Nachdom that say when there's according to Ben Beseira, when you go ahead and you take the Zor takes it and Ben Beseira says you can put it back, that's provided you didn't put it in the second kli yet. The Gemara asked, Mamanav Shach, it either is a psul when you took it or it's not a psul. And if it is a psul, you shouldn't be able to put it back. And if it's not a psul, you should be able to take it back in the second kli. Says the Gemara, it's not like you thought that you finished avodah when you did the kmitza. At that point in time, it wasn't finished. That's first base. Second base is when you put it in the kli. It's completed at second base. That's when it's completed. Fred the Gemara, if you're telling me it's completed in second base, because second base is a kli, putting it back in first base is like a kli. First base is also a kli. So if you're telling me putting it back into a kli is going to go ahead and completely passel it, why can you put it back in the first kli? That's the kasha. In other words, look at it as a base. First base, second base. A base is a base. You can't put it back in base. No back C's, no bases. It's gone. Says the Gemara. I'll tell you 3 terutzim we're going to get. Rabbi Yochanan, Soisei Meres, Klishares a Mekachin Elamidas. Klishares is only Mekadesh B'das. When he puts it back, fellas, he doesn't want the first kli to be Magdash it. When he puts it in the second kli, of course he wants to be Magdash it, or else why he's putting it in the second kli. When he's returning it to the first kli, good it's a Klishares, and good it has the capacity to be Magdash. But since he doesn't want it to be Magdash, it's not going to be Kodesh. Thus he's able to put it back. That's the svara behind Rabbi Yossi ben Yason and Rabbi Yehuda Hanachtam. Why they're able to go ahead and put it back. Why they're able to go ahead and put it back. Because the Kli Shares is Magdash Midas. Fred the Gemara, there's a question on that. For boy mine Rabbi Shlakish Rabbi Yochanan, Kli Shares Maushak Dishu Psulin Lechatchila Likarev. Right? Kli Shares, does it have the capacity to be Magdash of a Psul does it? In other words, it's once it gets in there, it's kodesh. Like, does it have the capacity to go ahead and be mekadesh? I'll give you a very good opinion, guys. Can the mizbeach be mekadesh? Something that's possible. You just the Masech Zvachim. Can the mizbeach be mekadesh? Something that, and the answer is yes, yes. Imalu lo yardu, as long as it took place in the kodesh. Imalu lo yardu. So here's the shaila. Can a klishares be mekadesh like a mizbeach? even though something is not should be there. It's a good Gavaldik Shaila. This is the Shaila that Reish Lakish is Rabbi Yochanan. Kli Shares Ma'u Sheyagdishu Psulin Lechatchila Likarev. V'amalei Ein Mekachin. He says what? He says Ein Mekachin. But you, Rabbi Yochanan, you said that what? That it's Mekadesh Midas. So L'chayr, it's Mekadesh Midas, it should be able to be Magdash it. Says Gemara Amalei, so Ein Mekachin Likarev. Of Mekachin L'Pasul. To be Mekadesh to the extent like Im Alul Yardu, that it's not. But to Mekadesh Livsol, right, that it can do. To be Mekadesh Livsol, that it can do. Rashi says, Shekachu Psulim Kigoin in Komat Zor, Vinoisin L'Kli, Maushek Dishu Kli Laktiroi. Could it go ahead wide and be Magdash it, that you can be Magder it? And we said, no, it can't. Why can it be Mekadesh L'Pasul? The Kabbalah who Kli B'Kedusha, it'd be Kaveya Kedusha in this Kaimitz. Ki Avinu Adaiti L'Kedusha, when you put it in there on the condition to Mekadesh, you can't put it back. The apostle. So in other words, why does it mean Kodesh the apostle that you won't be able to put it back? So according to Rabbi Yochanan, we asked Rabbi Yochanan in answer to the Kasha, why could you put it back? You could put it back. Why? Because it's only Mekadesh Midas. And when I go ahead and put it back, my dash is not to be Mekadesh. When I put it back, my dash is not to be Mekadesh. Fred the Gemara, Gufa, we asked, does it have the possibility to be Magdish, like a Mizbeach? And he said no. So you see that what I is das is Mekadesh. He said no. So you went, no. It's not Mekadesh to the extent you can be Makravit. It is Mekadesh to the extent you're apostle. So Einachinami, it does have that capacity. When you have das, it has that capacity. When you don't have das, it doesn't have that capacity. So in answer to the Kasha, again, guys, remember this Kasha. According to the Tanoim, Rabbi Yosef ben Yasin, Rabbi Yehuda ben Nachtam, who said when you put it in the second kli, then it's only out. But until you put in the second kli, it's not out. Why? Because it's the kli that's magdish. So therefore, you should not be able to put it back in the first kli, because the kli is going to be magdish. On that, we answer that Rabbi Yochanan, the kli is magdish only in midas. When he put it back in the first kli, he didn't want to be magdish it. When he put it back in the first kli, he didn't want to be magdish. When he put it in the second kli, you bet your bottom dollar he wanted to be magdish it, right? That's good for what the purpose of the second kli is. Okay, very good. Another teretz is kasha. Rav Amar Mamra Kegoin Shechziru Lebisa Gedusha. He never exactly put it back in the kli. The kli was heaped up. When he put the kaimitz back, fellas, he put it back on some of the shirayim or some of the wheat or whatever it was outside the kli. When is the kli shayis magdish? Only when you put it in the kli itself. But this is above the rim. It's above the lip of the kli. And there's stuff above there, and that stuff that's above there, that's where we put it. That's where we put it back. How could he have taken kamitza from there in the first place, guys? Look, if this is your kli, and this is your wheat or whatever that is, right? How could he have done? And you're putting it back. How could he have done kamitza in the first place? He's not doing kamitza in kli sharis. He's got to do it inside here. He's got to do it inside here. So how can he go ahead? So you tell me he put it back there. So why does it help? He put it back there. He's not putting it back in the kli. So how can he do kamitza from there in the first place? That's very afraid of the Gemara. And for the Gemara, el kigoin shechziru lebisa tfufa. It was leveled off. Meaning, so when he did, here's what happened, guys. It was fully leveled, like this. When he did it, he did it from over here. And look what he did. When he put it back over here, and then he went ahead and moved the kli until it fell into the guma that was there. So ein achinami, he did not put it back in the kli, but he was able to go ahead and do what the Gemara calls a maisa koif, an action of a monkey, to put it back into that spot. But the main teretz is you're not allowed to put it back in the kli, according to this. This Rav Amram could hold that a kli sharis is mekadesh afilu shlemidas, and therefore he doesn't have Rabbi Yochanan's poshut teretz that he put it back in. So therefore you have to come on to this ukimta that he put it back in a level place. So he didn't put it exactly back in the kli, and he moved it. He shuckled the kli until it fell in. Let's see the lashon. The basin, it was the bisa basin tfufa that was leveled off. The keeping the comments law lay Avaleguma, as soon as he went ahead and did kmitza from inside the kli, it created an area, an open area, a hole. Kimahada legave, when he put it back in, the mana kamahadale, he put it on top of the kli. The kimahadale monachle adafna, the mana, he went ahead and he kind of flipped it over. Umanale v'nafal memela, and it fell in. The nasa k'mishach siru a koif, that's as if a koif put it back. So again, matzah kasha. That's matzah kasha. How is it possible? You hold a kli is is the gemara avoida when you put it in the second kli or you put it in any kli. So what? How can you put it back in the first kli? It's also you're completing the avoida. But psul. One teretz says we don't have das. That's Rabbi Yochanan. The second one you never really put it back in. You kind of finagled it back in. Okay. A third teretz. Amalei Rav Yemi Rav Vizera. For look mikagoin she'achziru lekli hamunach al gabi karka. Well, he put it back to a kli that's on the ground. El shmamina kaimsim mikli shel gabi karka, right? So shmamina kaimsim bikli shel gabi karka. You could do kmitza from a kli on gabi karka. So his teretz would be that once the kli is on the ground, so let's say he put it back in that kli. How would this answer the kasha? Right? How would this answer? How would this answer the kasha? That if the kli is on the ground, it's not roila avoida. I guess if the kli is on the ground, it's not roila mana. So memela, since it's not roila mana, therefore it's not you right. Maybe perhaps. Let me see. I'm keep going. So the kli l'chayr would not be magdish on the ground. Now, why don't you give this teretz, guys? Because it would be magdish. In other words, if the kli is on the ground and would be magdish, so here's what I do: I put it back on the ground and I put it in the kli. We won't have to come on to das. We won't have to come on to an ukimta of like a monkey. We just go ahead, put it back in on the ground. And since it's on the ground, it's not magdish. Ella, when you don't say that, it must be on the ground, is magdish. Right? That's the way you learn the Gemara. In other words, when the Gemara could have given this teretz and didn't give this teretz, is because, okay, says the Gemara, the lukma, that's ein, that's speaking. The lukma going says ksiru lekliya munach gabi karka el shmamina. What do you see? Koimtzim mikli shel gabi karka. You will be able to do a kamitza from a kli that's on the ground. You will be able to do kamitza from a kli that's on the ground. It's not a problem, right? Says the Gemara, you're dealing with a big shaila over here. The boy the Rav Avimi, Tana Menachos bei Rav Chisda. Rav Avimi was learning Menachos in the yeshiva of Rav Chisda. Right. The Avimi by Rav Chisda Tani was Avimi learning by Rav Chisda. You know, it's mashma Rav Chisda was the Rebbe and Avimi was the Talmud. Ivam Rav Chisda kulpe tabi bolei me Avimi. Ich habe gekriegen asach petch von Avimi. Baruch, you understood that? Where's Kenny? Kenny, you understood that? He got beaten up a lot. Rav Chisda got gekriegen asach klap. He got plenty beaten up by Ravimi. So what do you see? Avimi was the Rebbe. You see, Avimi was the Rebbe. Kulpi tave bolim Avimi. So Allah, the Shmaitza, which sugya? Bola. Okay, so guys, if you have the karka of your Simon, you want to sell it, so you would want to get top dollar. So you'd have a shuma evaluation, and then you'd call it out for a lot of days. So it's not negay or us. It's simply that to prove that Avimi was the Rebbe. Bola hakris ritzufin. If you want to go ahead and announce, then lamid yoim. Then you announce if 30 days, if it's in a row every single day, it's 30 days. Sheni v'chamishi, if you only can announce on Mondays and Thursdays, when the people come, then samach yoimi. And then it's 60 days, total about 18 days. Avivi, so the chayra, you see that what? That Rav Chisda says, I got a lot of patch concerning this sugya. So the question is, Avimi was the Rebbe. Says the Gemara, Avimi mesech isakra. Right? It's Aker. Right? He lost Masech the Menachos, guys. He forgot it. But also Kamed Rav Chisda, and he came to Rav Chisda La'at Kure to remind him, right? Gamre, and to learn from him. So what happened? Avimi was the Rebbe. Avimi forgot a Masechta. So he was going to go to his Talmud, Rav Chisda, to teach him the Masechta. So that's what it says over here. That Rebbe Avimi, he learned Menachos by Rav Chisda, because he had forgotten it. Good? But he was the Rebbe. If he was the Rebbe, he should have sent for who? He should have sent for Rav Chisda to come to him and teach him. Savar, Rav Avimi held, Hachi Mistaya Milsa Tvei. There you more matzliach. Look at Rashi, Mistaya Milsa, Mishum Yagati Umatsasi. Because of Yagati, I worked hard at something and I found something. Okay, I think it's kedai to take a little respite over here and just from the Menachos Sugya to see a shtickle from Chaim Shmulevitz. So what happened over here? Avimi, when he was learning Masechta Menachos by Rav Chisda, the Gemara says Avimi was the Rebbe. Why was he learning Rav Chisda? Says Gemara because he forgot Menachos. Fred the Gemara said, why do you go to him? You should send for him. Said Ravimi, I'll have more siyata d'shmaya if I send for him. Yigatu matzasa. Now we always learn Yigatu matzasa means if you work hard in learning, you'll find. Like it's totally in you. You work hard in learning, you'll find. L'chayra, if it's working hard in learning, why didn't you go ahead and Rav Chisda, have Rav Chisda come to him and he'll work hard? In other words, if it's totally in me, it's totally in me, not location. So why he still have siyata d'shmaya more if he goes to him? If it's dependent upon his yigia, his work, let him send for Rav Chisda. He's the Rebbe, and let Rav Chisda come and he'll work hard by him. So Rav Chaim has a great shtickle on this, guys. Rav Chaim has a really, really good shtickle on this. Says Rav Chaim, believe in a Torah, Hakol Moedim. Lenny, listen to Sefer Sichas Musa from Chaim Shmulevitz. Believe in a Torah, Hakol Moedim, Shein Limtzoi B'lo Yegia.
I don't see that on the screen.
We don't see it on the screen.
No.
You don't see it on the screen?
Nope.
I saw it on the screen.
Yeah, there it is.
No, I see it twice.
No,
all right.
No, the top is correct. Believe in a Torah.
Believe in a Torah moedim she'ein limtzoi b'lo yegia. You can't attain it without toiling. The ikra shel Torah hu amola shel Torah v'ishtadlusay. The ikra of Torah is your amelis, you're working at it and keeping at it. Your shtadlus. Achein gam kan is shtadlus eina ela tanai. This is shtadlus like bitachon. It's only on a tanai. V'hatzlacha hi birchas Hashem. But Allah is the Kodesh Baruch Hu's bracha to you. Kimo she'omer b'gemara nida. Ki Hashem yitain chachmo mipiv das usfuna. Hashem gives you chachma piv das and svuna. V'ha b'loy ha haleisagi. One without the other is not. The hainu limud Torah b'loy tefila leisagi. You got to daven. You have to daven for atzlach in learning. Uv Menachos Avimi mesechtes yakale. He forgot the mesechta. V'yasa kamed Rav Chisda talmidai lat kurei umaksha hasam v'lishalach lei v'leisi legabei. Send for him and let Avimi come to Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda come to Avimi. Umeshani sava hachi mistayim milsa. Upirish Rashi mishum yagatu matzasa. V'sham vaday borul chol kilo yegias ha'alicha goyremes u'masif Torah. Him walking to him, guys, is not going to increase his knowledge of the Torah. Avimi walking to Rav Chisda is not going to increase his knowledge. El Kamosh is bar. Sheina yegia el tonight l'hatzlachas Torah. It's a condition. V'chol yegia nichlo b'chal yagatu matzasa. You see this other piece? There's another piece over here. You see it also? Says the Rav Chaim. Says Rav Chaim that fatzlach in Torah it's siyata d'shmaya. The yegia is like you go to work. We all know that working, it's not the etzim work that goes ahead and gives you the parnasa. It's Hashem who gives you the parnasa. Hishtadlus, the yegia, is only a hechetimtz of Hashem to give it to you. Who adin le'inyan limud Torah? That's only who you did in Limra Torah. It's Hashem's way of giving it to you, right? And he brings a raya, guys. He says that the fact that you have to yagia is from the klala b'zeyas hapecha toichel lechem, and he's describing the Gemara that tells us that when a child is in its mother's womb, he's learning kol Torah kula, and he's being nurtured by the mother. He doesn't have to work for his food, it's provided for his mother. He doesn't have to work for his Torah, because there's a malach teaching him. He said that he can look from one end of the world to the other end. To a baby, everything, all the hidden parts of the Torah revealed. And all this is without working at all. What's the reason? The baby in the womb was like Adam before the Chet. And the klala of the sweat of your brow, you'll have to work. It's not chal on the uber in his mother's womb. Because if it was chal, why would an uber be zeicha to something that we in our lifetimes are not zeicha to? Once we're born, we have to work at everything. But in the uber, that asks us to work at anything. But a person has to put into an Torah. That's also as a result of the Chet of Adam Arishain. Guys, you hear what he's saying? Since the Uber was in the womb, was learning everything, and then is born and he forgets everything and has to work at it, that's a result of the Chet of the Yetzadas. So the B'zeis HaPecha Toichel Lechem is not only what in for Parnasa, it's also for Torah. V'cheinomu yagatu matzasa. The Hainu. Sha'af la'acha kol tareach v'yagia b'Torah. If that person works so out of Torah, eina hesek sheyagia love haloymid ela b'bchinas matzasa. It's all that you found it. In other words, what is finding, fellas? You didn't work at it. You found it. Yagia, you do yagia, but guess what? Hashem is good to you. He allowed you to find it. Kimitzia haba behesach hadas. Like a mitzvah that comes without you thinking. Ubaloy kol kesha ala yagia v'achipa shekadmu. Okay, and that's that. Then he brings in our Gemara, and so that's the Yesod of Chaim, that learning is siyata d'shmaya, guys. Learning is siyata d'shmaya. You put in your shtadlis, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will bench you. It's like you go to work. If you're not mishtadli, you're not going to have a dime to your name, and it's not a lack of bitachon. Hashem put. So you have people we see, they work and work and work, and whatever they work, they eat X amount. You have people who put in a little and they have a lot. So it has nothing to do with Etzem Yegiyah, that's to do with the Bracha of Hashem. And that's over here, it's geschmack as anything. It wasn't his amelis b'Torah that he'll go there. Yagatu Mitzasa. He felt he have Siyat Shmaya, that would be my ishtadlis to allow the Bracha of Hashem to be chal. That's the Rabbi Chaim is learning in this Gemara. A beautiful deher, guys. A beautiful deher. So in learning, put in your time and daven to the Rebbeinu Shalom that you should be matzliach. But again, it's not the etzem like the parnasa. You can work and work and work, and you'll end up in the same place. Learning also without siyat d'shmaya, without birchas Hashem, and that's what it means over here. This one Rashi, mishum yagata, since I was magia mitzasa, I was magia. I worked. And memela, what's mitzasa, guys? You ran into it. Mitzasa. Ich hab gefunden. Like, right? Ich hab gefunden. There you go.
So his year was because he walked to the Talmud instead of calling the Talmud to come to him?
He felt that would be more hishtadlis in order for the bracha of Hashem to be chal by going there. Because again, if it's his work in Torah, amelis in Torah, he could have his Talmud come to him and be amal also. But he felt that the shtadlis to the bracha to be chal would be the lashon of the Gemaras. Hacha siyat and milsa will be more matzliach as a result.
I'm trying to process because there
There's a
mitzvah of it says in b'chukosai telechu. In other words, what is that? There's that famous Rashi. That's the Yagiyah in Torah. In other words,
yeah. Okay, so now take it a step further. So you Megiyah in Torah, then the bracha of Hashem will be chal.
But you still need tremendous yagiyah. In other words,
You got that's what he's saying. But not the etzim yagia is making you know Torah better. It's the bracha of Hakadosh Baruch Hu. The bracha of Hakadosh Baruch Hu will come about as a result as a yagia.
but there's no correlation to the amount of yagiyah and the amount of bracha. That's my question.
Again, I'm not the Rebbeinu Shalom. I don't know, but again, based upon Rav Chaim, yagia is part of the klala of the Eitz Hadas. His raya is a great raya. The baby's not chal. The baby gets everything, right? And he gets everything. So what happens? He's born, and then so therefore that's the b'zeis hapecha toichel lechem. So what does that mean? If you correlate it to parnasa, you know that parnasa yagia. So sometimes I guess again I'm not going on a limb. Let's say a person spends 5 hours a day learning, and another person learns 10 hours a day. Ken Zayin, the guy learning 5 hours a day, can be having more siyat d'shmaya because his yigiyah for what he's able to do is more than the other guy. I'm just giving my own thought. Yeah, Nassim, what was your question?
That Bezeas HaPecha includes learning. We all grew up learning Bezeas HaPecha Toichal Lechem, it says. So that good. Learning is also part of Bezeas HaPecha is a major chiddush.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think.
It is, but as always, Rav Chaim's rayas are so on target. The reason this sefer was so matzliach is you can't argue with it. In other words, he opens your eyes to things. This sefer, guys, was the number one sefer that was Makarev Russian Jewry. This sefer, the refuseniks during the 80s, this sefer was the sefer that it just brought it all together. His idea and his ability to bring the idea throughout the prism of Torah, it's just amazing. It's just amazing. You know, I think of Chaim as a Bal Musa. My Rabbi said on Chaim Shalevitz, I'm quoting because I was in the car with him. He told me, I'm sorry, this is all Yiddish. Rav Chaim is a Yid, was is durch gehorvet in Sifri, Mechilta, Bavli, und versteht sich Yerushalmi. No. Yerushalmi and versteht sich Bavli. That was the lashon. He goes, durch geharvet means he was immersed. He knew well every sifra, every sifri, every mechilta, all the right. Yerushalmi und versteht sich. The lashon versteht sich and self-understood. He was a sefer Torah, but his sefer is unfortunately we only have 3 years of it that the Talmidim went ahead and gave it over. But it's a yisoid. You know what? For me, why does it talk to you? You sit down and learn. You do the best you can, but always realize that it's a bracha from Hashem, whatever you get. I sometimes sit down and share often, and I know I'm not sure exactly how it's going to come out. Sometimes it does not come out so well, and sometimes it's the siyata d'shmaya. I realize it had nothing to do with my preparation. It was siyata d'shmaya of the share and the siyata d'shmaya of the Kodesh Baruch Hu wanted it to be. I've had shurim that I went into. I told Ruthie, I said, I don't know how this. I don't know. And I come home and I'd say, "Sure, I'd be flying because it just works so well." Okay. Either way, it's a great shtickle. Again, it's a wonderful sefer. They have it out in a new edition. I have I have the original edition. This is the original edition, but there's a new one with a better print. There's even an English one available. There's even an English one. They gave out at the dinner one year. It's even in English, albeit it loses something in the translation. Okay, so we're holding with a kli, whether a kli on the ground, you could do kmitz from a kli on the ground. So the Chaber said you could, says the Gemara. Pago be Rav Nachman, Amalei, Ketzad Koimtzin, Amalei, Mekli Zeh, Amalei Vichin Koimtzin, Mekli Shal Gabe Karka, Amalei, Demad Balei Koyin, that a Koyin would pick it up. Ketzad Mekachin, Esa Menachos, how you Mekadesh Menachos to put it in. Amalei, nice in the Kli Zeh, you can put it in the Kli that's in the ground. So there's two things. There's the Kemitza from the Kli on the ground, and there's the Bimagdish on the Kli that's on the ground. Amalei, the Magbalei Kayin picked it up. Amalei and Cain, Chutzrachno Gimel Kahanim. You're going to need 3 Kahanim. Guys, you'll need 1 Kayin to hold the one that you're doing Kemitza from. You need a 2nd Kayin to do the Kemitza. And you need a 3rd Kayin to go ahead and hold the Kli to put it in. Again, you can't do it with your left hand, right? So you need one holding the kli if it's not on the ground, second one, and the third one to put it in that kli. Samalei with tzrichid gimel kitamid. But we're not taking account. The carbon tamid took 13 kahanim, so you have 3 kahanim to do kmitza. Okay, you have 3 kahanim to go ahead what and do kmitza. That would be what Esaveh. Now Rav Nachman is going to ask from a mission later on about putting in a kli on the ground. Zaklal. Anyone was speaking in pigel. Hakoimitz, that's avodah number 1. Vanoisim bekli, that's Kabbalah, that's number 2. Hamoilech, that's Halacha number 3. Vamakdir, that's Rika, right? That's avodah number 4. If you have a machshav of pigel in any of these avodas, lechol davar shedakar lechol, chutz l'chmakam chutz l'zman, it'd be pigel mechayev of karis. The ilu magbia, the kli, like tani. We don't learn, according to you, that you have to pick up the kli off the ground. You can't put it on the ground. L'chayru, you should consider this as well, picking up the kli from the ground, and as you do that, you have a machshava of pigel. So this is what Rav Chisda asked. So what said Avimi said Ella, the Tana. He didn't mention this, Mishum Seda Avoida, V'lei Seda Kahanim. In other words, he was giving the Seda of the Avoida that involved in what? In a mincha. The Seda Avoida is what? The Seda Avoida is, first you do Kmitza, then you put it in the Kli, then you walk it over, and then you burn it. Are there other Kahanim involved? Yeah. The one, if it's on the ground, he picks it up off the ground. So what do you see? Einachinami, that you could do magdish in a kli or kmitza from a kli that's on the ground, because they're not giving you the order of the amount of kahanim. We're giving you the order of the avoida, and not the order of the. Rashi says, say the avoida is nakat. Oisa shakayin echad oisa, the one that one kohen does. Ze achazeh, guys. What does one kohen do? He does the kmitza. He does the Nesina B'Kli. He brings the Kli over. He burns it. But we're not saying Aval L'Minyana the Kahanim Le'nachti. We're not giving you the numbers of Kahanim. Good? Okay. But Einachinami, you could put it in the Kli, Magdash on the ground. It would be Kodesh if you put it on the Kli on the ground. Says the Gemara Vaita. Boy mine midrav sheshes. Mahu likmoitz mi Kli shal gabe karka. Can you take a Kamitza from a Kli that's on the ground? Amalei, so the ones who Rav Sheshes told these people, Poik chazi my ovnan legavoy. Go look what they did legav, what they did in the Heichel. Now, obviously, it doesn't mean to go to the Beis HaMikdash because there was no Beis HaMikdash. But what did they do? Okay, so the lechem aponim was baked on Friday, put in on Shabbos, and stayed the whole week. And on Shabbos, the Mishmar went in and the one went out, and they divided among them 6 to the one going in, 6 to the one going out. What was the matir of the lechem aponim? Was the bezichin that was on top of it, on the shulchan. They would take that bezichin and take it and burn it on what? On the mizbeach achitzayin, and that matir lechem aponim. Nimsa is a corollary, guys. The taking of the bezichin, the frankincense pots, are the equivalent of kmitza. Taking those things off the shulchan was the same thing as taking kmitza from what? Okay? So now, Arba kahanim nichnasin, 4 kahanim would go in, shnayim biyodam beis sidarim, 2 of them had the 6 and 6, the lechem aponim, ushnayim biyodam shnei bazichin, and 2 of them had the 2 pots of frankincense. The Arba mekadmei lefneihem, and 4 would go in front of them. Shnayim litel shnei sidarim, 2 to take the existing ones that are on the shulchan. Ubeis litel beis bezichin, and 2 to take what? The bezichin, and 2 to take the pots off. And again, guys, the pots, the bezichin, are equal to what? Are equal to the kamitza, the act of kamitza. Good? Ve'ilu magbia es ha-shulchan like it, honey. It doesn't say they picked up the shulchan. So if taking of the bezichin is equal to kamitza, therefore You see, you could take it from on the ground because the shulchan, they didn't pick up the shulchan. Rabbi Avi, what's your incredulous look?
The shulchan, it had legs that rested on the ground, but the lobes were on poles above above the shulchan.
Is the shulchan a kli? No. So you're learning, well, the kli is the top part of the table, and the bottom part is what is legs. So it's being elevated. What's the answer to your question?
It's all one kli.
Thank you. There you go. You answered your own question. You answered your own question, right?
Thank you.
Okay. V'ilu magbir as a shulchan like katani, says Rashi, guys. V'ilu magbir like katani, sheyeh acher magbir shulchan, that one person should pick up the shulchan, b'shas silik habesichin, when you took off the frankincense, alma miklisha al karka, hayasolkin bazichin. From the kli that was on the ground, they removed the vazichin. Ubezichin matirin es alechem. And the vazichin matir the lechem, ki kaimitz shemata es mincha. Like the kaimitz, the matis the shirayim. In other words, you can view the lechem aponim as shirayim, and the vazichin is the matir, just like you view the kaimitz. Geschmack is anything, guys. A very good raya says of sheishes l'chayra, so you can be poishit to shaila, that you can be kaimitz from a kli that's on the ground. Fantastic. Back inside the Gemara. Lav Amir Hassam say that avoidus nakat. Hachanami say this avoidus nakat. Maybe someone did pick it up. In other words, you're just telling me the order of things, right? You tell me what one person can do. Bump a bump a bump a bump. And you're not telling me everything that was done, right? You're not telling me everything that was done. So in Hachanami, maybe they did pick up the shulchan. You have no raya. Guys, what's the answer to that? In the first brisa, we didn't give a number. In the second brisa, we're giving a number. We're telling you the amount of kahanim. So if there was a kohen that picked it up, it should have mentioned it. In the first brisa, all we said, guys, look, go back to the Amid Aleph. Go back to the Amid Aleph. Zeh klal, kol ha-koimitz v'nois and b'kli done. It can create pigel, right? Do we mention any number? No. What's the answer to the question? There really was more kahanim. We only mentioned what? The one. We only mentioned the one doing it. Okay, comes along now, and 4 lines up. Arba kahanim echnasim shnayim biyadam. Right? Are you giving the numbers of kahanim? So if you are, and there's one who picked it up, you should mention that as well. Ella, when you don't mention it, there was no one that picked it up. So therefore, it's a raya. You could go ahead and do kamitza from on the ground. Says the Gemara. Me dummy, how can you go ahead and compare the two? Hasam Menachos leminyana the kahanim. Over there, we didn't give numbers. Hacha nachas leminyana the kahanim. In Isa, if there was one who picked it up, listening magbia. Elashma mina kaimtzim miklisha gabe karka. You can do kamitzah from a kli that's on the ground. Shma mina, right? Shma mina. It's a good raya, and that's it. Guys, we're good. Nice Gemara. Amarava pshitali. Koimitz miklisha gabe karka, shekem matzinu besilik bazichin. So you can go ahead and do kamitza from a kli on the ground, because that's exactly what happened by the shulchan. The shulchan is considered on the ground. You went ahead, you misalik the bazichin. That's the same way as being koimitz, and therefore it's magdashit. It matters lechem uponim. We also could be makadesh mincha. Guys, this means putting the kaimitz in. Guys, this means you have a kli on the ground. This is you're putting the kaimitz in, the second kli. Makmitz means taking it from. Makadesh means putting it in. So in addition, you can go ahead and put it in. So what we find by the sida bazichin, guys, you put the bazichin on top of the shulchan. Isn't that what are you doing? You're taking the kaimitz and you're putting it on top. So who did you're taking the kaimitz, you're putting on top, right? So the boy rava kiddush kaimish mai, kiddush kaimitz mai. What's the din? Okay, what does Rashi say? Kiddush kaimitz, says Rashi. The loy ashkim bebazichin keshu misalkan dahainu kemitza shei noisin l'shum kli ela miyad maktiro hilcha lekach lemifshet kiddush kaimitz mehasam. You can't go ahead and be poishit kiddush kaimitz mehasam. Okay. Kiddush mincha beklish al gabe karka. I'm missing something over here. Okay, I got it, guys. I got it. I got what I was missing. Mikachim mincha. When you bring the mincha from your house, you could put it in a kli on the ground. In other words, going back to the hakdama, right? You go ahead. You take the mincha, the flour, and you say it's kodesh. That's kedushas damim. Now you come and you're putting it in. That's what it meant, mekadesh mincha. Okay, so look, I learned wrong pshat, so Baruch Hashem, I can correct myself. Guys, read like this. Amarava, pshitali koimitz mikli shel gabe karka. You could take kemitza from the kli on the ground. Shekein matzinu besilik bazichin. We find the mesilik bazichin, right? Good. Mikachin mincha bekli shel gabe karka. You could be magdish the mincha, meaning the initial kli, giving it kedusha when you bring it from your house. You could put it in a kli shares on the ground. Shekein matzinu besida bazichin. That's what you would find by the Siddur Bazichin. Guys, look at it. Look at me. If you schmack it as anything. When you take the lechem aponim, what are you doing? You're taking the lechem aponim and the Bazichin, and you're putting it all as one. And then later on, you're going to move the Bazichin. So too now, I'm putting everything as one, all of the flour. And therefore, when I later on I move the kaimitz, the bezichin is like moving the kaimitz. But initially, everything's together. What's going to be the kaimitz and the shirayim? That's the shulchan. The bezichin is going to be the kaimitz, and lechem aponim is going to be the shirayim. It's going to be mata. So since when I created that on Shabbos, that's the same thing as bringing the lechem aponim, the mincha, totally intact, with what will be the kaimitz and the shiraim in it. That's the first part. Now the second part is, can I do kemitza from? Okay, that's the second. Okay, Baruch Hashem. So now let's see one more time. Amarava. Pshitali kaimitz mikli shel gabe karka. I can take kaimitz from a kli on the ground. Shekemitz sina besilik bazichin, because that's what we found by the bazichin that you were able to remove it. Right? You remove the bazichin. That's like removing the kaimitz. That's on Shabbos. Now. Mikachin mincha bekli sha'al gabe karka. You can be magdish a mincha for a kli that's on the ground, meaning when you bring it from your house and you put it in, where do you see you can put it in a kli that's on the ground? Shekei matzina besida bazichin, because that's exactly what you're doing by the bazichin. What are you doing by the bazichin, guys? You're taking the kit and caboodle and putting it together on a kli shares. Meaning you're taking the bazichin and the lechem aponim, who are then the same thing. You take the whole mincha, because it's the same thing. Guys, you see the mincha being the same thing as the bazichin and the lechem aponim. What's going to be? You're going to take the bazichin and you're going to be left with lechem aponim. So you have the whole entity together now. When you bring all of the flour from your house, you have the whole entity now, and eventually you're going to take. So now here's the question. Can you take it from on the ground? The question is, now he wants to know, my Rava, Kiddush Kaimitz Mai. Now I know you could do Kemitza, but can you go ahead and be Magdish to Kaimitz? Can you put it in a Kli on the ground? Can I put it in a Kli that's on the ground? So I did my Kemitza from a Kli that's on the ground. Can you do that? Yes. Because why? Because I take the Bezichin. Now, the Bezichin never make it to the ground, guys. The Bezichin goes ahead and gets burnt. Right? Can I go ahead now? What do I do with this kaimitz? Can I put it in the kli on the ground? That's what we want to know. Mi mincha yalfina la. Just like the mincha, the initial carbon, when you bought it from your house, you can put it in a kli on the ground. So too, the kaimitz, you can put it in the kli on the ground. Dilma mi dam yalfina la. And dam, he has to be holding it. The Kabbalah has to be in his hand. Okay, I just spoke a lot. Let's get down to brass tacks. Take a look at me, guys. Bottom line. This is on the ground, right? This is the second kli. I have a koimitz in my hand. Can I put that in? I can't learn that out from the shulchan. I can learn out from the shulchan. I can take the kamitza because the v'zichen come off the shulchan, so the kamitza comes out of the kli. That I could learn. I cannot learn. I could also learn that to bring the initial, I can bring the initial mincha and stick it in. That I could learn because you bring the siluk and the zichin and you're bringing the lechem upon and put it all together. Now that you took the koinitz, I don't have an analogy to the shulchan because the shulchan you take and you burn it. Here I'm going to go ahead and put it in a kli. Can I take the koinitz and put it in the klis on the ground? If it's like the mincha, meaning the creation of the mincha, then I could. Just like the mincha putting in from your house in here is good, so to the kamitza putting in here is good. Or no, do I look at it like a carbon? By the carbon, when you spritz the dam, before you spritz, when you shecht, what are you doing? It's not going on the ground, it's going in a kli, and that kli is being held. So memela also, by kaimitz, it has to be a kli that's being held. That's the kai. That's the shaila. Says the Gemara. Hada pashta. He's pashta that what? Pashta midam yalfin Allah. It's like dam, right? It's like dam. Okay? Midam yalfin Allah. And once it's like dam, then what? You would not be able to put it in a kli on the ground. You'd have to put it in a kli that's not on the ground. Umi amar Rava hachi va'itmar koimitz shecholku b'shnei kelim. You took the kamitza and you broke it up into two kelim. Rav Nachman amar ein kaddish. Rava amar kaddish. V'misa leiluf midam. By dam, guys, if you had the dam in two separate klis, it doesn't work. If you broke it up in two separate kelim. So if you Rava are going to learn from dam that it doesn't work on the ground, because you'll learn from dam, you should not be able to go ahead and break it up into two kelim. Yet Rav says over here you could. And for the Gemara, Hada Bei Rava. Rava had charata mehahi, meaning even if you can't break it up into two kalim. You know, you can't break it up. He had charata inachinami. If you break it up into two kalim, it would be asa. V'dam minol under lekidish lechatzayin. How do you know, in fact, dam that you can't be magdash lechatzayin? Now we had this Gemara, guys, in Zvachim. The Tani Rav Tachlifa ben Shol Kiddush Pachas Michdei Hazah. You're speaking about paraduma, and you take water and you get the share, but it's too little for the spitz. Beklizeh uplachas Michdei Hazah beklizeh. So you don't have enough in one kli for a spitz, but you have two. Like Kiddush, it's not going to be Kiddush. In other words, you have to go ahead and initially mix together an amount that's right for hazah. And if not, not. B'dam mai. I know this is what by the water of a paraduma. What would it then be by dam? Let's say, guys, you have in other words, we know that by paraduma, you have to go ahead and do hazah. You have to spitz towards the oil. You have to spitz towards the oil moyed. By Par Hanisrafim, you also have to spitz on the proiches. So by Par Hanisrafim, let's say you had 7 spritzes, and one kli you have 3 spritz, and the other one you have 4. What would it then be? Do we learn out from Paradum it's no good or not? So, Bedamai, Hilchasahi, it's halacha l'mash misinai that you need the full share by Paraduma, and you don't learn from halacha, so therefore by Param Hanisrafim, you would be able to go ahead and put it into separate kelim. Idil mahasam, my timer. What's the reason by paraduma? Dichsiv v'tavel b'mayim. It says lashon tefillah. Hachanami yaksiv v'tavel badam. It says v'tavel badam. So v'tavel's mashma, you would need to have the share of tefillah. V'itmar amrav zrika amrav alaza af bedam like kiddush. Even by dam, it's not kodesh because you need the share. Amarava tanya nami hachi v'taval. You have to dip the blood in, v'lei maspig, and you can't go ahead and take your finger and rub it on the side of the kli and collect the dam from there, but you have to be tovel your hand in dam. Bidam, what does the word bidam teach me? Shei bidam share tefillah. That has to be the share of being toivel. Meikarai, min hadam. What does min hadam mean? Min hadam shebe inyan. We'll see what that means in a second. If this sounds familiar, guys, we did this in Sadi Gimel. The ikas rachmana v'taval. If it's just right v'taval, havamina afagav kibul share tfilos. Even if it doesn't have the share tfilos, it would be okay. Ameikara kas rachmana badam. So when it says badam, it's mashma. You have a share of dam. Because rachmana badam havamina filu maspik. I would say what you have the share. Good, you have the share of dam, but I would say you could rub your finger on the wall and get it. Because rachmana v'taval, right? That you have to be toivel. So min adam. Shebe inyan, what's dam leminyan? Nemute mai, amarabba, nemute shiraim shebe etzba. So guys, when you spritz, right, you'd have, you know what you do, guys? You'd spritz towards the oil moyed, or you'd spritz by the serum and the srafim. That dam that's on your finger, each spritz is considered a separate mitzvah. So that dam is on your finger. We did this is shirayim. So you'd have to wipe it off before you go ahead and do the second one. Min adam shebe inyan, that means that the mute. The dam that you had on your finger, once it's after you do the spritz, you got to get another one. That's what it's teaching me. Messiah leila Rabbi Lazar, Shiraim shebe'etzva psulin. Shiraim that's in the etzva psulin. Amalei Ravin barava adal lerava. Amri talmidcha amar Rav. You said that your Talmud said the name of Rav Amram. Tanya hoya maza benitza hazabiyah. This is the Indian guys of kibbutz begadim. You might remember that by a chatos, if it gets wet. Gets on the beged, you have to go ahead and wash it in Makom Kodesh, right? So when that's when it's considered dam. When it's not considered dam, then there's no din for kibbutz. So what's going on over here? Hayam nitzav hazam yadai. He's spritzing, and it leaves his hand. Imach lehiza tayin kibbutz. Mishahiza ain't tayin kibbutz. As long as he's spritzing, you need to wash. Once he stops spritzing, you don't have to wash. My lav loy gama hazal. So here's the half minute, guys. Watch. One, if it lands on something, you have to wash. Two, you have to wash. Three, you have to wash. In other words, when it says Gemar Hazasoy, the Havamina is from 1 to 7. And this is a raya that the dam on your finger is not Shirayim. If it's going from 1 to 7, so each one, I have 6 others. After the first one, I have 7 Shirayims, right? L'chayra, so you have a kasha. You're telling me that the lashon min hadam is to mimayit the case of what, where it's extra that you have to get rid of it. So l'chayra, we're saying over here not. We're saying until you finish the hazah, it's considered dam. If it's considered dam, it's not shirayim, and you'd have to, the din of kibbutz begodim would go ahead and apply. So the Gemara's answers, shmami no the shirayim shebetz ksherim loy achla yotzam yodai. Hazah tayin kibbutz. Umishiyatza hazah miyadai v'nitza. Mashinisra ain't tayin kibbutz. Perish. Until it leaves your hand, then it needs kibbutz, because then it's dam. Once it leaves your hands, not. Because why? Because then it's shirayim. So it's not like you thought we're going from 1 to 7. We're going 1. And on 1, there's a difference between when you did it and when you stopped. Number 2. When you did it, when you stopped. So each one, you're going to hazah on each individual one because it's shirayim after you did the hazah, what's left in your hand, and therefore there would not be no din of kibbutz on that. And this is the pshat min hadam. So we brought this in to be shown that what you need a shear. How do you know the shear of dam? Because it says by paradum of it says b'tavo v'adam, and therefore you need what the shear tefillah, and you need a dam in there, and min hadam that is shirayim. Says the Gemara. Once you finish spritzing, you go ahead and you wipe your hand on the par itself. In other words, we said everything has to be burnt, so even the dam has to be burnt. So once you finish, then you wipe your hand. Gemar in, loy, gemar loy. Mashma, when you complete all of the 7 spritzings, then you wipe your hand. But before that, you don't have to. Why? Because it's not shirayim. When you finish all of it, then you wipe your hand. Mashma, until you finish all of it, you don't have to. It's why? Because it's not shirayim. Amalei, gomar mikanech yodoi. When you finish, you wipe your hand. Loi gomar mikanech etzboi. In other words, it is shirayim. And when it says you wipe you finish, you wipe your hand, but your etzba, you're wiping after each and every hazah. You're wiping each and every hazah. You're wiping. Very good when you're mekanech yod beguf shel para. Dichsiv v'sar v'sapara leinov. Eloi gomar mekanech it's boy b'may mekanech. What's he going ahead? What and wiping it on, fellas? What's he wiping it on? Now, what would the problem be by his etzba wiping it? Look at Rashi, 4 lines up. B'may mekanech chi bein kol hazah v'hazah yored mehar mishcha. Between every hazah would he come down from harazesim lekaneach beguf hapara. Smash from Rashi that the paraduma was not on top of the mountain. It's mash from Rashi, it wasn't top of the mountain. Now this is very interesting because we have the same Gemara in Sadi Gimel, and Rashi says over there in Zvachim, guys, you know what Rashi says over there? You know why he doesn't go ahead and wipe it? Because his hand's going to get full of hair. His hand's going to get full of nimim. It's very. I'm not sure if it's machlokes where the paraduma was. It's interesting to see. So Rashi gives one reason in Zvachim, another reason over here. The bottom line is it's shirayim. That's the bottom line. That it's considered shirayim, and therefore, where would you wipe your hands? The Gemara answers, where would you wipe it on? Amarabaya bisfas mizrak. You'd wipe it on the edge of the kli, kidchsiv, kipurei zav, right? Kipurei zav, that they would go ahead and wipe over there. Okay, I guess we'll stop over here. Everyone should have a very good day.